Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is the Otherppl podcast, a weekly program featuring in-depth interviews with today's leading writers. I'm Brad Listi here in Los Angeles, California. I'm your host. It's good to be with you. Thank you for listening, and happy holidays. It's almost here. It's almost over. Maybe you're enjoying it. Maybe you don't want it to end. Maybe you are in a domestic pressure cooker. Maybe you're at the airport. Maybe you're in the fetal position. Maybe you're celebrating. Maybe you're dancing. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you are doing, just know this. I wish you well. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening. I feel like anybody who would be listening to this at this time of year is looking for an escape. So I'm happy to provide that escape for you if that is indeed your mission. But if it's not, if you're just listening because you like to listen, if you're listening in the midst of some kind of celebration, that's fine too. I don't judge. So it has been a year. That might be the best I can say about 2024. It's been a year. It's been another year. In many ways, it's been great. In other ways, historical ways, geopolitical ways, psychospiritual ways, it has been a devastating catastrophe, at least from my point of view. But when it comes to the podcast, it's been a great year. I read a lot of great books. I talked with dozens of gifted writers and was very honored to be able to share those conversations with all of you. And so, in the spirit of the season, I am going to do an episode where I share my favorite books of 2024. And in this particular episode, I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite novels, my favorite works of fiction. And then in the next episode, I plan on sharing with you my favorite nonfiction. So that's how I'm going to divide it up. Today's episode is brought to you by Tin House, publisher of The World with Its Mouth Open, the debut story collection by Zahid Rafiq. I'm going to be talking with Zahid Rafiq on this show in the weeks ahead. The World with Its Mouth Open is the official December pick of my book club, the Otherppl Book Club. For more on it and to sign up, visit otherppl.com. The World with Its Mouth Open follows the inner lives of people in Kashmir as they walk the uncertain terrain of their days, fractured from years of war. This is a very moving, very beautifully written story collection and an impressive debut by Zahid Rafiq. One more time, it is called The World with Its Mouth Open, available from Tin House. Don't forget to sign up for my weekly email newsletter over at Substack, and if you are in the holiday spirit and you want to support the work that I do here on the Otherppl Show, please consider joining the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. All right, so here we go with today's episode. My favorite fiction of 2024, 5 novels, as it turns out. And instead of doing these books numerically, instead of trying to rank them somehow into a top 5, culminating in my favorite book of the year, I'm just going to do it alphabetically. It was too much for me to decide. It's hard to just pick 5 anyway, but to then have to choose from among the 5, it was just too intense for me this year. I couldn't take it. I could not handle it. So I'm just going to do it alphabetically. There's no particular order other than that. So having said that, the first book on the list is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. This is a debut, which is kind of astonishing. A remarkable debut novel about a girls' boxing tournament called the Daughters of America Cup. The tournament is held in Reno, Nevada. The story takes place in a boxing venue called Bob's Boxing Palace, but the primary setting of the narrative in many ways is in the inner lives of the young girls who are participating in this tournament, as we learn about their pasts and their traumas and their fears and their hopes and their heartbreaks and all of the life stuff that fuels them in the ring. This is just a tremendous book by a writer of great talent, and I was so pleased to meet Rita Bullwinkle and to have her on the show in episode 923. That episode first aired on June 2nd, 2024, and here is a clip.
You can feel like you're an audience member to a play, and when you're watching two really adept boxers, it feels so much like their bodies are in dialogue with one another. It lends itself towards a narrative interiority that I think some other sports, even though I love other sports, like I love basketball, I love watching it, I love playing it, but it doesn't quite have the same potential for narrative interiority, if that makes sense. It was, I think it really is the fact that boxing is a one-on-one sport that allows for a greater potential for portraiture. I was just talking with a friend about how I think the only other sport that has such a natural potential for portraiture and for dialogue, like bodily dialogue in place of spoken dialogue, is probably tennis. And a lot of writers write about tennis as well. And I think that's probably not a coincidence.
Okay, that was Rita Bullwinkle. Her debut novel is called Headshot, and it is available from Viking. I recommend you get yourself a copy if you haven't already. Up next in my list of favorite novels of 2024 is The Road from Belhaven by Margot Livesey. And this is interesting because if you were to describe this book in a nutshell, you might say something like, oh, it's a story about a young woman coming of age in 19th century rural Scotland. And, nothing wrong with that. I'd love to visit Scotland someday. But I think I might, if I heard that, be like, I'm not sure. But this is why we read. This is why we pick books up. Because The Road from Belhaven, as it turns out, is definitely for me. I was totally absorbed by this book, which is about a young woman named Lizzie Craig growing up on Belhaven Farm in Scotland. And Lizzie is blessed with the gift of second sight, which is to say she can sometimes glimpse the future, though seldom can she change it. This is just a wonderful novel. It is so richly imagined. It brings Scotland to life in all of its beauty and hardship. And you just get into these people's lives. It's like they're real. A terrific novel and a terrific conversation with Margot Livesey, who made her debut on the Otherppl show in episode 897. Our conversation aired on February 7th of this year, and I'm happy to share an outtake from it with all of you right now. Lizzie, your heroine, has second sight, and she sees what are called pictures, or what she refers to as pictures, where she can usually see bad things prior to their happening. That's the pattern, right? It's usually bad things. Yeah. And I'm wondering if this is something you have drawn from family history. Was this the pattern in your family? Did they ever see good things?
Well, I do have Lizzie see some ordinary things, like somebody getting a new hat, for instance. So there are meant to be more mundane things. I have two friends who can see the future in a very ordinary sort of way, and I talked to both of them about what that experience was like. So Lizzie's experience is modeled on my understanding of what they described. Just, it's as if the teeth of time slip and they can suddenly see something and then they slip back again.
That was Margot Livesey talking with me about her novel, The Road from Belhaven, available from Knopf. It's a wonderful book. A great book to read if you would like to be somewhere other than the United States of America, which I think describes at least half of us at the moment. So up next in my list of favorite novels of 2024 is the debut from Kimberly King Parsons. It's called We Were the Universe. And this is a special book. It is wild and heartfelt and horny. Many reviews refer to it as a horny novel about grief, about consciousness, about attention and desire, and marriage and motherhood and family. It is about a woman named Kit, who is a young mother in Texas, and she is mourning the loss of her sister Julie. I think when Kimberly King Parsons first started this book, the germ of the idea was that it would be a book about motherhood, psychedelics, and Texas. As it turns out, that is as good of an encapsulation of this book as you could probably come up with, considering all that it contains. A totally gripping and heartbreaking and funny and filthy and profound novel, and a remarkable debut. I had a great conversation with Kimberly King Parsons in episode 926. It first aired on June 12th, 2024.
I do think that in the past I have felt that there have been certain shortcuts to resolving things, like psychedelics, for example, like in the past, and not necessarily with grief. That wasn't something I was dealing with at that time in my life. But I feel that there are sometimes these moments that feel like shortcuts, like big breakthroughs, like huge epiphanies. And for me, some of those came from actual real life, positive, formative experiences with psychedelics. Like I felt like I had done years of therapy in, a weekend or something like that. But I definitely think that grief is this sort of all consuming, you carry it around always, forever. And then sometimes it gets lighter or heavier depending on what you're going through at that moment. But it does feel to me to be a very constant thing, just something that you have to figure out how to live with, because it's not like even something like forgiveness. I feel like forgiveness can be kind of finite. Like I feel like I've forgiven people in my life and I really have not thought about them in a negative way again, or I felt a lot of resolution. But grief, there's just a lack. Someone is gone and they won't ever be back. And that's, I think it is the sense that you have to figure out how to assimilate that fact. That is, for me, it always just felt so unbelievable. Like, how did this happen? Like, I just can't believe that it really happened. And to, not to keep yourself from trying to call that person on the phone, or all of those things that are going to continue to come up for you years after something like a huge loss, will happen. But yeah, I don't think it ever really goes away. And I think that Kit, the character in the book, is lying to herself with this idea that if she could just do psychedelics one more time, she could deal with some of this stuff. But I think that we, the reader, know there's no shortcut to grief. You just have to go through it.
Okay, that was Kimberly King Parsons. Her debut novel is called We Were the Universe, available from Knopf. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Go get your copy wherever books are sold and read it. So, up next in my list of favorite novels of 2024 is another debut novel. This one by Alexandra Tanner. It is called Worry, and it is a very funny and insightful novel about two sisters named Jules and Poppy Gold, who in their 20s become roommates in New York City. The novel is contemporary. It's set in March of 2019, and it depicts a sisterly relationship that is complicated but loving, at turns warm and then combustible. And the writing is brilliant. It's very psychologically astute and culturally aware. And Worry is, as I would describe it, very like Larry Davidian in its comedic sensibility. I just loved it. It is a rare novel that made me laugh out loud. And I had a wonderful time meeting Alexandra Tanner and talking with her about this debut of hers in episode 9/11. Kind of perfect for a New York novel. I know that's not an appropriate joke, but it just came to my mind. So anyway, I talked with Alexandra Tanner in episode 9/11. It first aired on March 31st, 2024. Siblings really get the kind of the rawest version of you, right?
Completely unfiltered. And sort of, I think with this book, I wanted to play with this kind of weird navigation of stakes we're talking about, where the stakes aren't a breakup. The stakes aren't leaving each other's lives. The stakes are just these people are going to say and do unimaginable things to each other and then just kind of have to live with, oh, I did that to this person. I said that to this person who I love, who my soul is entwined with.
And it's an awful thing to say, and it's an awful thing to do. And with literally anybody else on the planet, I couldn't get away with it.
But you can get away with it with a sibling.
Yeah.
Again and again and again.
And it's like this guaranteed, I guess you would call it forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Is that what you would call it? Like you're going to forgive each other for whatever. Like there's no, like you would really, like I'm trying to imagine what you would have to do. Like what kind of transgression would truly cross some sort of line.
It's forgiveness. And I think the reason that line is so different with siblings is because there's complete understanding, especially if you're siblings who grew up in the same household. I mean, sometimes siblings have a big age gap or they grow up at different times, but when you have been with someone every day of your life, forgiveness is not even the right. It's almost like there's nothing to forgive because you understand where every impulse this person has comes from and why they lash out. And you can make fun of the way in which they lash out because you've seen them like craft this way of lashing out for whatever, 20 years.
All right, that was Alexandra Tanner. Her debut novel is called Worry, and it is available from Scribner. It is superb. Get your copy immediately and buy one for everybody you know. We are now to number 5 in my list of 5 favorite novels of 2024. I will conclude today with Rejection, the novel and stories by Tony Tulatamudi, who incidentally just guested on the program last week in episode 948. What can I tell you about Rejection? It is one of the darkest, filthiest, funniest, and smartest books I've read in recent memory. It is unforgettable, it is heartbreaking and lacerating and illuminating. It shines a light on the many manifestations and consequences of human rejection and human loneliness, and it is totally uncanny in its psychological and cultural fluency and precision. Just a remarkable book. And a great conversation with Tony Tulatamudi just last week, episode 948, which first aired on December 17th, 2024.
I wanted to write about rejection, and I usually don't really start with like a title and theme because I find that like the work that comes out can get kind of schematic or sort of title driven in the way that like when you read an Onion article, sometimes you read the headline and then the article just kind of recapitulates the headline over and over again. So, I try to avoid that usually, but I just knew this time that that's what I wanted the subject to be. So I was writing all these different kinds of pieces like, vignettes and like a glossary. I was doing a bunch of like research in like social sciences, weirdly, and I didn't know what form I wanted it to take. And then I just put it aside eventually. Got back to it in like 2017 when my agent like shouted at me to actually focus up on a book, and was focused on it from there till when I sold it around like 2022.
Do you know why Rejection Like the topic of rejection was interesting to you?
Well, yeah, obviously. The obvious reason, which is that, I've just been through a lot of it. I mean, this, like, just as a writer, it's just something that you have to inure yourself to, or you're not going to make it, right? And that's just on the professional side. I mean, on just like the personal level, like, yeah, I have 8 or 9 different axes in which, like, I feel, generally, slighted, rejected in this kind of like intractable way. Don't really need to get into them, but rest assured I know of what I speak.
Okay, everybody, there we have it. That was Tony Tulatamudi talking about his new novel and stories. It is called Rejection, and it is available from William Morrow and Company, an outstanding work of fiction. Available now. Go get your copy. It's a great stocking stuffer. And that concludes my list. My 5 favorite novels of 2024. I want to say again how incredibly difficult it was to choose. There are many novels that I think could easily have made the list. If you're listening right now, if you're cursing my name, if you're sewing a voodoo doll in my likeness, just know that I probably loved your novel and could have easily put it on this list. I had to make a decision in the end. I did the best I could. And I hope you enjoyed it. I feel like we got to do these lists. Well, probably we don't, but it sort of can feel like you have to. And I think with all the books that I read and all the writers that I talk to, it sort of makes sense for me to do an episode where I share some of my favorites. Why not? Any one of these books could change your life. I can't imagine anybody not liking or finding at least quite a lot about any one of these novels that is very redeeming, You might not love it quite as much as I did, but I cannot imagine reading any of these books and not recognizing the excellence on the page. So, just to review, Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle, The Road from Belhaven by Margot Livesey, We Were the Universe by Kimberly King Parsons, Worry by Alexandra Tanner, and Rejection by Tony Tulatamudi. Those are the 5, and I'm sticking to it. Congratulations to all of the writers on doing such excellent work and making such fine contributions to like the great stream of literature. Is that a way to put it? That's vaguely urinary. I'm sorry if that's inappropriate, but you know what I mean. The continuum, the ocean of words in which we all swim. Don't forget to subscribe to the Otherppl Show if you haven't done that. Hit the subscribe button wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, Bluesky, TikTok, and Instagram. Don't forget to sign up for my weekly email newsletter over at Substack. I would love it if you did that, and I would love it if you would join the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. If you would like to join my book club or get an Otherppl t-shirt or an Otherppl hoodie, you can do all of the above at the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you have 2 minutes and you're feeling generous, if you're in the holiday spirit and you want to help me out a bit, do me a quick favor. Please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, rate the show, write a little review if that's an option. It helps. It helps the show in the algorithm, and it helps the show find new listeners. Last but not least, I have a book out. I have several books out, but my most recent book is a novel, and it is called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. It is a great Christmas present, and just something to give somebody in the week after Christmas, or in January, or February. Again, it's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything, available in trade paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. I narrate the audiobook, so check it out if you want to check it out. One more time, it's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. All right, so happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy atheist, nothing. Whatever you're doing, enjoy yourselves, because you probably have some time off of work. If you're lucky, if you don't have time off of work, I hope this episode has helped you pass the time. So I'm wishing all of you well. I'm grateful to all of you for listening to this show and supporting this show and reading. You have to read, especially nowadays, right? Books are going to be part of the solution, or part of the medicine that I think a lot of us are going to need in 2025 and beyond. So hang in there. And I think my plan is for my favorite nonfiction of 2024 to air in a new episode on Thursday. So I'm going to try to make that happen. We'll see if I can get it done amid all of the chaos of the holidays. You're just going to have to wait and see. Stay tuned.